afternoon, everybody. I'm Harriet, the Vice President of Support International Foundation. So we're so glad to have all of you here today and extremely honored to have Mr. Gary Liu here to share his invaluable experiences with us. But before we continue, for people we haven't met before, we would like to just describe and explain what Support International Foundation's goals and visions are. Founded in 2014, Support International Foundation is a global, youth-led education NGO dedicated to bringing innovative educational programs as well as youth empowerment programs to different communities in need. Since our founding, we have grown from 1 site and 1 program to 6 sites and 9 programs, each initiated, led, and maintained by individual, passionate, driven young leaders. Our mission has continually been to create opportunities and foster connections between students of different communities, under the guiding principle and firm belief that young leaders are tomorrow's leaders. There is a wide diversity of the different programs that we run, ranging from debating and critical thinking programs at the Tackwood Secondary School to our environmental studies program at the Aberdeen Technical School. What makes it so special is that we are youth-led. All programs are designed, implemented, and taught by us. Beyond the innovative and highly relevant programs, we are also the founder of the Youth Leadership Conference that takes place once a year. I know some of you actually attended that earlier this year. Our conference capitalizes on giving back to the community. It is one of the few conferences that are targeted at high school students in Hong Kong. We continually aim to redefine what it means to be a youth leader, what it means to give back to society, and what it means to live sustainably. We hope to inspire and cultivate more youth leaders by providing students the necessary resources and skills to become one, such as through networking opportunities with fellow innovators in our local community. Today we are very happy to have Gary here as our guest of honor. Gary is a California native who has lived in New York for nearly 2 decades, having grown up in Taiwan and New Zealand. He also has a degree in economics from Harvard University. Since the beginning of 2017, SCMP has appointed Gary as the Chief Executive Officer. Before SCMP, he was the Chief Executive of DIG, a New York-based news aggregator, as well as the head of Spotify Labs. As a leading individual in our constantly developing world of technology and media, Gary's a very face of innovation. Today, we hope you value this opportunity to learn more about Gary's experiences. So the rundown of today is as follows. From now to around 6 p.m., there will be an interview led by Anthea Lee, right here, with Gary Liu. After the interview, we'll have a short Q&A session during which it's open up to the floor. You guys can all ask questions, and after that, we'll take a group photo, and you guys can feel free to walk to Gary if you have any further questions. So right now, I would like to invite both Anthea and Gary to the stage to conduct the interview.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for agreeing to come once again. I know Harriet gave a brief introduction of you. Could you give also a brief introduction of yourself in your own personal way?
In my own personal way, I can tell you that I shouldn't be the face of innovation, by the way, Harriet, because then innovation is not going to look very good for any of us. We'll let the employees at South China Morning Post in a couple of years tell you whether or not that's true. So I have an interesting background, actually, certainly interesting for the job and the role that I'm in right now. Let me talk about the personal and then we'll go into the career stuff. So I was born in Southern California, in Anaheim, Orange County, which is why everyone refers to me as a Californian native, but I do not feel like a Californian at all. I don't actually represent California in any way. The speed of life that I like, my interests, a lot of these things don't necessarily match up. And I know I'm generalizing with Californians, but I'm very much a New Yorker more than a Californian, I think. From there, I moved back to Taiwan, where my parents are from. Okay, they were born and raised in Taiwan, and I lived there until I was about 5 years old. At 5, my family moved to Auckland, New Zealand, and that's where I spent the next 9.5 years. Okay, so growing up in the British education system in Commonwealth country, that was my first real exposure to Western culture. When I was 14, I moved to New Jersey, which is on the east coast of the United States, right outside of New York City, and that's where I started high school. which was a shocking experience because American high schoolers are really mean, and I was very different from everyone there, and it wasn't easy for me initially when I first got there. So 4 years in high school in New Jersey, then went to Harvard, which is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And then after that, effectively spent the following 12 years in the American Northeast, starting my career. So I spent a little bit of time in Michigan, and then moved to New York City, and was in New York City for 8 years before I moved to Hong Kong. So that's personal life. From a career perspective, the reason why I say I'm odd for this role is because I don't come from the traditional news industry. I come from pure technology, right? Whereas we generally refer to it as just tech. I come from the tech background. My career started off at Google. I was in Michigan for Google. Google had a very small office at that point in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where University of Michigan is. So I worked for Google for 2.5 years, and I moved back to New York. Was at a startup there, then went to AOL, and then I joined Spotify. And then after Spotify, I led a small startup called Digg.com, D-I-G-G. Most of you guys here have no idea what that is. But trust me, at one point, Digg was a really, really important technology startup. It was really famous. And then it became not so famous, and then we tried to revive it. I think we did a pretty dang good job. And then just in January of this year, moved to Hong Kong for the South China Morning Post. So always in technology, but at the intersection of media and technology. So what I know is how to create, how to distribute, and how to monetize content across the internet. And I do think that that's why I've been asked to come and participate in the transformation of this very, very historic and important paper.
Right. So back to your early life, in a way. What were you like as a teenager? Have you always had this dream of being an entrepreneur? Have you always had that qualities that you gotta lead a company? Anything like that?
Gosh, no. I stumbled into this when I was a teenager. So I was in New Jersey, technically, 14 to 18. I was awkward. I was really awkward. I'm telling you, I arrived in New Jersey from New Zealand, so I had a very strong New Zealand accent. Okay, now, you guys are all students here in Hong Kong, which means you're used to all sorts of different accents. And I'm guessing you, generally speaking, don't make fun of each other for accents. I hope you don't. Okay, because you're all used to this amorphous Hong Kong accent. You're never sure where anyone's from. Parents are always from multiple different countries. You guys are all third culture kids. But in the United States, that's not the case. So when I arrived with my thick Kiwi accent, no one could understand me. And it was pretty bad. I also went to a very traditional British prep school in New Zealand, which meant I only wore uniform. I'm talking about like the traditional British prep school uniform, the Harry Potter style uniforms. And so when I arrived, I had no clothes on my own, so I wore like adult clothes that were way too big for me. I got made fun of a lot. So the awkwardness did not lend itself to the A-type personality, the confidence that you usually associate with entrepreneurs. So for me, I was just very fortunate in my career to have followed some very smart people, to have surrounded myself with very caring mentors who really did want to see me, I guess, improve, and they led me throughout my career.
So what prompted you to do economics? Was it the school curriculum, or was it when you got to Harvard and you really explored for yourself?
The easy answer is because I have Asian parents. And so when I got to Harvard, I had to choose something they understood. So it was either biology, chemistry, physics, or economics. Or maths, but I was never smart enough to just do pure maths. And back then, computer science wasn't an option for us. Well, that's not true. Back then, computer science wasn't popular enough for it to be really an option for us. So I chose economics because it was the easiest out of all of those majors. It was the one I would fail least often at.
That's actually me right now.
Yeah?
My parents are doing the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
But you know, it's weird it was weird to me at first when, you know, you have this economics background, but then you move really a lot into tech, especially even now at SCMP, you're trying to develop more in the area of tech. How did that transition work?
It's a good question. So Harvard is a liberal arts university, and what the school teaches you is how to learn. More than anything else, it teaches you how to learn. So I'll tell you very honestly that the facts and the formulas and the theories that I learned in my 4 years of being an economics major at Harvard, I don't remember any of that. I've never been able to apply any of that science, right, or theory to my job, because I didn't work at the International Monetary Fund or at the Federal Reserve of the United States. So what I got out of my education was how to be curious about new things and go teach myself those new things very, very fast, which is really the skill set that I've applied to the rest of my career. So to answer your question, economics, nothing to do with what I've done, and it's okay because I was fortunate enough to learn how to learn, and that has carried through.
Does the economics not help at all, even in the idea of leading a company, of being an entrepreneur?
Parents will be upset at me saying this, but no, not for me. It hasn't helped. It's so different. When you are, what I studied was literally theory. Was saying effectively things like, if you print more money, what happens to bond returns and what happens to interest rates? Theory.
Yeah.
Right? That is the liberal arts education, the theory of economics, macro and microeconomics. So unless I really work in policy, that kind of learning doesn't necessarily apply. But it doesn't mean that the education was wasted, right? It really is that process of understanding how to learn new things, how to find theory and be able to, or learn theory and be able to apply it into new situations, right? How to be agile in the way that you look at the world, how to look for different perspectives. Those are things that are going to be really important in your careers.
Business schools are actually really popular right now. So do you think, because you are in that area of business, do you think that to do business you don't actually have to learn business?
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble here. Like I said, I come from the tech industry, and the tech industry very unfairly, the tech industry has a tendency to dismiss those who went to business school. Okay? I don't think it's fair, because I do think that business school in general, getting an MBA, can teach you a heck of a lot. MBAs, by the way, are an incredible 2 years. I never got one, but a lot of my friends did. And what you learn is you go through case studies. Again, I'm generalizing, but generally speaking, you go through case studies. You read a bunch of stuff about how companies have failed and succeeded in the past. And from those case studies and your own personal work experience through the 2 years of business school, you learn very tactical, applicable things about how to run business, right? How to identify an obstacle that you run into and how to get over that. So I do think that there is a good amount of value in learning those things. At the same time, those are the same things that you will learn if you find yourself in the right opportunity throughout your career. So the reason why tech has a tendency to be unfair to MBAs is because this industry we work in, or I used to work in, that probably a lot of you guys are interested in, this industry is being reinvented every single day. Actually, it's not even reinvented, it's being invented every single day. And so there isn't enough history in tech to really have a body of case studies that can teach you all the different things you're going to run into. Because most of the time, what you're going to run into is something that is brand new. It's a problem that no one has ever experienced before. Right? You're trying to build something that disintermediates the historical giants in the industry. Right? So you are doing something new. You are the trailblazer. And so a lot of times those case studies may not be applicable. Which is why I think a lot of technologists would tell you, if you want to gain that business experience in tech, go work in tech. What you will learn in 2 years working at a startup company and running into these issues, right? What this group of folks here at Support International have learned by running this NGO over the course of multiple years will be just as applicable, if not more so, in your tech career. Okay, now, to be clear, I'm not dismissing MBAs. I'm explaining to you why the industry may have a tendency to disqualify them unfairly, but that's why.
All right. Okay, so moving on to SCMP. Why do you think it's so important for SCMP to really keep up with technology, and how does that really go with media, do you think?
consumption behaviors have completely changed, right? So the internet effectively, at its simplest, it's a series of pipes that carries content from one place to another. That's what it is. And news is a type of content, right? And so the future of our news industry relies on us understanding how people find and consume news, consume content. So if we sit around and say, okay, that the paper newspaper is always, it's been the way we've been doing things for 150 years. The reality is that in another 20, 30 years, there isn't going to be anyone around who wants to read news by buying a paper newspaper. And that's an understanding or realization that the news industry has known for at least a decade. And they really honestly should have known for 2 decades at this point. So we're already 10 years too late, right? And our transformation. So understanding technology is really about understanding how you guys, how the next generations want to find and consume content. Because that is going to be our business. That is going to be our only way of survival in the future.
And what are the ways that you're taking to achieve this? By, of course, changing from one medium to another is extremely difficult. What's your approach?
That's a big question. Let me see how best to answer it. I think the first thing is that we have to relearn our own marketplace. We've always had assumptions about who our readers are. And for a long, long time we were right, because our readers didn't really change. Right? The reason why people consume news and the way they consume news effectively didn't change for about a century. Suddenly, it's changing every other month. Right? Every other month, 6 times a year, we are discovering new distribution channels, new apps that young millennials and Gen Zs are using to communicate with one another and to find and consume content. And so the first thing that the industry needs to understand is that our old way of life is gone. And we have to be active about discovering what people are using today and what that behavior is. Right? So that willingness to acknowledge that the old days are gone and we have to learn the new ways, that acknowledgement is step number 1.
So is your ultimate goal to replace paper and newspapers entirely with technology, with apps, with websites, etc.?
Replace might be the wrong word here. We need to be where our consumers are. Right? So for newspapers, it was always readers. Now, really, the term is users. Right? So we need to make sure that our news is available where the users are. However you guys want to discover news. Right? If you guys want to find out news on your Facebook newsfeed, we have to be there. If you use Twitter, we have to be there. If you use Snapchat, we have to be there. If you use WhatsApp or WeChat, we have to be there. So if you use Musical.ly, we probably won't be there. Because that would be awkward, but maybe we'll experiment with it. So it's not so much replacing the paper. It's the fact that you guys are shifting. You guys are moving away from reading paper, so wherever the heck you are, I have to be there. I have to find you. Because your expectation, it used to be, if you wanted news, you go to a newsstand and you buy a paper. Now, your expectation, right? You young people, you and your habits. Your expectation is that if my news is important enough for you, I have to find you. Right? That's what literally you're telling me, right? I'm busy. Hey Gary, SMP, I'm busy. So if your stuff is worthwhile for me to read or watch, you find me, right? Like, sincerely, that is your expectation. And so, for my business and my industry to survive, I have to do exactly that. I have to find you. So I'm not forcing the replacement of paper just because I don't like paper. In fact, I grew up reading paper newspapers. Okay, it's funny. None of you guys are surprised by that because to you, I'm super old. But when I tell this to my colleagues, they're surprised because to them, I'm super young. So I'm like, I'm right in the weird part where I keep saying I'm way too young for news and way too old for tech. This is a great example of that. I grew up reading the paper newspaper, and I still love the tactile feeling of getting to my office every day, and I have 7 newspapers that are delivered to my office every day. And I open them up, and I try and read them cover to cover as much as I can. So it's not that I want to replace it because it's a bad format. It's not actually a bad format, but it's just not how you guys operate, so I have to serve your needs as my users.
Will you continue the paper newspaper industry though? Or will it be...
I have no right to speak for the industry.
Sorry, I mean as your own medium, are you completely going to discard the paper newspaper?
No, we're not. So the South China Morning Post will have a paper newspaper for quite some time. For as long as our readers here in Hong Kong want the paper newspaper, we will have it. As long as it doesn't distract us from the new ways. Okay? And this is really, really important. The paper newspaper for us is to serve Hong Kong, because this is the only place that we print and distribute the newspaper now. Okay? The paper did at one point was distributed outside of Hong Kong, but now we have kind of reconsolidated and we're distributing only in Hong Kong. So as long as there are Hong Kongers who want the paper newspaper, we will do our best to print it and distribute it to you every single day. Right? I will, as CEO, only consider cutting it if all the interest is gone. Right? There are no more readers who want the paper newspaper. Or I find that creating the paper newspaper every day, the process of creating the paper newspaper, is distracting us from the things that really matter. I don't expect either of those two things to happen for quite some time. So do expect that your parents will still be getting the paper newspaper for a while.
And Harriet too.
And Harriet, you're an old soul? Yeah, well done.
So I asked about your approach to this transition. You know, there are a lot of news outlets that have been doing this a lot longer than SCMP, for example, let's say Apple Daily. Is there a new approach you're trying to push for?
So I'm guessing what you mean is that Apple Daily has been making the digital transformation a lot longer than SCMP. Yeah. That's what you mean, okay. I'm not even sure that that is accurate, because SCMP has had a website since 2000, believe it or not. Actually, early in that mid-90s, SCMP started experimenting with having, at that point, a URL, which no news organization in Asia had. I think SCMP was one of the earliest. We haven't quite, as a company, we haven't quite leveraged that asset well enough. But, to your point, what Apple Daily has done so well is that they have invested in the right kinds of new digital formats. Right? Apple Daily, of course, has a strong website, a pretty decent app, and of course they have the animation news format that they, I can't say invented, but they definitely, they perfected, popularized, right? So kudos to Apple Daily for having understood the changing consumption behavior and investing in that change. For us, we have to catch up, but at the same time, Apple Daily is not our competition, right? Because we are an English language newspaper. And the people who read us, generally speaking, the overlap between Apple Daily readers and SCMP readers is actually quite small, quite slim. And on top of that, a huge amount of our readership now is coming from outside of Hong Kong. And so international readers who want to understand Hong Kong and China better, and therefore read SCMP through scmp.com, generally speaking, they don't read Apple Daily, they're not Apple Daily readers. So we do have to catch up, and again, good job Apple Daily for investing in this and making the transformation. We do have to catch up, but they're not the folks that we're necessarily looking towards to give us a roadmap of what we should be doing.
Okay, so let's move on to something a bit, but let's go back to something a bit more personal. What are the skills that you think an aspiring entrepreneur should have? Is there anything that is particularly important?
Can I answer a little bit differently?
Yeah.
Instead of skills, how about I suggest two personality traits that are really important for entrepreneurs? One of which I've already mentioned. The two personality traits I think that are really important if you guys want to start your own business or your own venture or your own NGO are curiosity and humility. Okay, that's what I found in my career. Let me explain it. Curiosity means that you are constantly looking for a different perspective or a better way. which means you never get stuck in this trap of believing that what you're doing right now is absolutely right. Which means that you don't get stuck in the loop of doing only what works. And it actually, at SEMP, one of our values for the company is curious and courageous. And those two things, by the way, I think are two sides of the same coin. For you to be truly curious, you have to be courageous because you have to be ready to accept that what you think you know is wrong, and you have to accept a perspective that you may not like, right? And that, I think, is an incredibly important personality trait for an entrepreneur. Because being an entrepreneur means that you're effectively doing something new, doing something different. If you're not always looking for a different angle or something else that's never been tried before, you're probably just going to repeat the same mistakes that other people have already made. The second one is humility, because, gosh, if you're not humble, or if you're not able to be humble, being an entrepreneur is going to kick your ass. Because it is extremely, extremely hard. Okay? And if you're arrogant, you will quit. I swear to you, you will quit. Because the first time you run to that obstacle when what you thought was going to be the way, you're so sure that this is going to succeed, when it inevitably fails, you're not going to know how to handle it. Humility actually gets you over the hump. Humility allows you, when you trip up, to be like, all right, I kind of expected to fall, because I'm not the best in the world, it turns out, right? And I'm okay with that, right? I don't know better than my competition, and I'm okay with that. And I will always be looking for somebody doing it better than me and aspire to be like them. And let me, sorry, I know I keep going on really long with answers, especially this one, because this matters, okay? The second piece of the humility thing that's extremely freaking important. If you want to be successful at any part of your career, especially as an entrepreneur, when you hire, you have to surround yourself with people who are better than you. This is something that, trust me, when you walk into a big company, generally speaking, big companies do this wrong all the time. Because for whatever reason, we feel like if the people we hire have to be worse than us. Because, oh, if I'm the manager and if I'm the leader, if I'm the CEO of the company, then I must be the best. So either I just psychologically decide to hire people who can learn from me, or I hire people who are not as good as me so that they're never a threat to me. That happens, A's hire B's, B's hire C's, C's hire D's, and suddenly you have a company filled with people who are not very good. If you are humble as an entrepreneur and you surround yourself with people who are always better than you, when you hire, your first thought should be, can I learn from this person? Can I be better? Can my company be better because of this person I'm about to bring in? Don't be threatened by them. Don't feel like if just because you are the founder or the CEO, you have to be the best in the company. That's the worst case scenario, right? So that humility will actually help you hire correctly.
Do you think maybe leaders in a company don't want to hire people that are better than them because they think they can't really fulfill their role as a leader?
Yeah, I think it's because you misunderstand what management is. I think that leaders misunderstand what leadership actually should look like. I was very lucky. My first manager ever in the tech industry at Google, when I was at Ann Arbor, told me something that when I was that young, it completely rocked my world. Because he told me, he was my manager, and he goes, hey Gary, let me tell you what my job is. My job is to ensure that if I get hit by a bus, the next day, no one is going to notice that I'm gone. Think about that for a second. This is the leader of a significantly large team at Google, telling this right out of college kid who knew nothing. My job as a leader is to make sure that if for some reason I disappear, the next day, no one notices I'm gone. Which is the exact opposite of, I think, how most of us are raised to think about leadership. We think leadership is the most prominent, the smartest, the most vocal person, that if they disappear, suddenly the company collapses. Right? I think a lot of leaders, they want, when they go from one company, when they leave a company, they want the company to fail. I think deep down inside, if you were to ask them, they will tell you that. You close the door and don't have a recording device on and they're honest with you, they want to see the next person who comes after them do worse than they do. Because then it proves their worth in their opinion.
So in a way, a lot of people are actually confusing being a leader and with bossy?
I don't know what the adjective is. I think that it is just, we think leadership should be about empowering the people around you. I believe that if you are a great leader, the most important thing you can do is make everyone around you better. Right? And it's not because, oh, I'm going to make you better because I'm smarter than you, so I'm going to teach you everything I know. It's because I'm going to put all of my effort and energy into making sure you have the opportunities to become better. That may have nothing to do with me, I may have nothing to teach you, but I'll put you in an environment and I'll make sure to shield you from all the distractions so you can become better. So that, again, if I disappear the next day, you're so damn good at your job that no one's going to notice I'm gone. Is this like, at least for me, it blew my mind when I was told that for the first time. Is this different than what all of you guys think of when you think of leaders? Okay, they're nods. You guys are very quiet, very shy. Okay.
I think the perspective is that when you're a leader, you're on top of the world. And so it's kind of like you're stepping on people. That because you're on top, you have the ability, you have the power. So I think that's a lot of people's mindsets.
Yeah, I think when you are a leader, you have to be the best person in the company at serving others. So we refer to it at SCMP as servant leadership. And that's exactly how my executive team works. If you make it to an executive level, then you have to prove that you deserve to be there by serving people more often, more aggressively than everyone else.
What do you think is the future for media and journalism?
I think that's another big question. These are good ones. I think that we now live in a world where news, high-quality journalism, objective news, is more important now than ever before. Because, here's what happened. The internet, which is a great thing, it democratized, look at this elevator, completely packed with people. Sorry, I got distracted. The internet democratized information. So effectively what it means is that somebody growing up in Hong Kong in a really, really good international school with access to, by the way, I don't know if you guys know, this city has some of the best internet speeds in the world, having access to that kind of internet speed. Your access to information should be exactly the same. Should be, okay, in an ideal. It should be exactly the same as somebody growing up in a third world country in a village that only has, a single 2G dial-up, a 2G connection. That's what the internet has ostensibly done, is democratize information. And that's a great thing. But because of that, what it has also done is it's equalized everyone's voice. And that is dangerous. It means that experts who have spent their entire career, decades studying something, okay, their expertise and the importance of what they say about their subject can sometimes be equal to somebody who literally just went to Wikipedia and looked something up and is just randomly giving their opinion. Their voices sometimes are equal because the internet has normalized those things. It's equalized the volume. Which is why we have hashtag fake news, right? So this is why real news, quality journalism, that has been done the same way for so many years, literally, it is really hard to be a reporter. And when you've been trained to be a reporter and you've spent your entire life to be a reporter, the output of that is quality journalism, is real news that is more important than ever because we all deserve to understand that there is truth. There are nuances and shades of truth, but there are certain things that are real and certain things that are fake. And so news organizations that hold on to this accountability and say, what I provide for you is not clickbait. What I provide for you is the real truth, is news. It is more important than ever. So the future, I believe, is going to be the golden age of news because more than ever, you guys, this generation needs it. And we also have the internet, which gives us the most number of storytelling channels and formats that a newspaper has ever had before. In the past, news organizations had one of 3 storytelling methods. Either it was printed on paper, or it was audio through radio, or it was a news broadcast on TV. Now, we have everything. Right? We have all of those. We have Facebook Instant Articles. We have Twitter click-throughs and mobile web. We have Google Amp. We have short-form video. We have square videos and vertical videos and horizontal videos. We have the Snapchat format. We have bots and chat apps like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. We have all of these things. And all of these are different ways to tell a story and to express the truth through news. It absolutely, for a journalist, should be the golden age.
So the idea is to really have equal access to information and to... The thing is, there are so many fake news outlets right now. Is it hard for a news company to really have that same integrity? And it's often really difficult for readers to really discern. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very key point. News organizations, as of right now, primarily do not own our own distribution, which is very new for us, and it's very confusing for our industry. We used to own our distribution and our own consumption platform. Okay, those are two different things. What I mean by that is that we used to print the paper and deliver the paper. So we controlled how you got your news and in what format you read it. Now, we generally don't control either. Right? We distribute through social media. And the consumption platform is often not on our own website, right, somewhere else. So we now rely on other people to have the accountability to call out things that are fake. Of course, Facebook has been under a lot of fire to do this. So has Google, because especially with Brexit and the U.S. election, and now right now the French election. There have been a lot of examples of these distribution channels, especially Facebook, allowing fake news, actually complete BS, right, to propagate through social media and become the most read article about a certain topic, and it's completely BS. It's completely made up. And Facebook has finally, last week, admitted, Mark Zuckerberg finally admitted that maybe, just maybe, Facebook newsfeed swung the U.S. election, because they really do have that kind of power. So, the news organizations definitely have accountability to be able to continue to own our brand and teach youth like you guys how to be media literate, how to tell the difference between fake news and real news. But a lot of these platforms that now own distribution also have to have some accountability to call out, at the very least, call out fake news, if not to limit it and restrict its distribution.
Thank you so much for coming here once again. I've got one last question for you.
All right.
One last word. What is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
My younger self. Oh gosh. Yes, thank you, Harriet. This is, yeah, I need to call you every time I'm discouraged because people keep referring to me as old. One piece of advice I would give my younger self. This is a shockingly hard one. Boy. Okay. I would sincerely say that it should be that I would tell myself to go discover more. That's so cliche. But here's what I really mean by that. I was on rails for most of my life. Supposedly, according to my parents, when I was 6 years old, which, I mean, what 6-year-old kid knows their future? Supposedly, according to my parents, when I was 6, I said, I want to go to Harvard, right? I don't believe them, by the way. And from then on, my life was on rails. And I'm sure most of you guys, especially growing up in Hong Kong, you feel like your life was on rails. There is a set of things you're supposed to do. So from then on, I had my tutors, and I went to the right schools, and I studied the right things, and I played piano and viola, and I did 4 different types of sports, and I went and volunteered. I did everything. I did not start an NGO, so kudos to you. Right? I did everything, and then I got into Harvard. And I was happy for about a second. And then I wasn't really that happy, because at that point I was like, okay, what did I do all this for? Now I'm thankful that I got to go to a school and got surrounded by people better than me, who are still my lifelong friends, right? But I do think that I missed out on discovering great things at your age. Okay? And this is not the smell the roses kind of crap, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about try different things that honestly at your age, you may go another 20 years before you have the opportunity to do something cool, do something new. Because once you get into adult life, man, the real responsibilities come. I got married young. I got married when I was 23. I've been married for 10-some years now. And when adult life hits, like, that's it, discovery time, over, man. It's over. And it won't be until after, we have kids and our kids go off to university, and at that point, then we get to discover kids. So it's actually not 20 years, it's like 30, maybe 40. So I would say discovery.
You're still young. 40, okay.
Yeah, these guys are so nice. Benson, why aren't you this nice to me?
I'll try.
And I think it's a miracle you didn't become a doctor.
It is a miracle. It's actually to the disappointment of my parents that I did not become a doctor, or a lawyer, or a banker.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are now going to Q&A.
So thank you for the talk about the importance of connectivity, harmony, and how we can connect differing opinions in our society. So right now, we're going to open up the floor to all of you for you guys to ask the questions that you did not have a chance to figure out just now. And so one of our volunteers, Carissa, will take our microphone around, and you guys will have a chance to ask questions.
Hey, just wanted to ask, you got into Harvard, which is one of the highest ranking US universities, and I'm just wondering, in your perspective, with the benefit of retrospect, do you feel having one of those top, like, super, almost Ivy League, so
almost Ivy League.
Is it Ivy? I'm sorry, like, there's some...
Go ahead.
I mean, Stanford's not Ivy, but it's one of the best, so I'm just a bit confused because it's like a really good university and really good rankings and reputation. Was that really significant in your life?
Listen, I'm very highly biased. I do think my education was really significant, but not because of the name brand. Okay? My education was significant for two reasons. Number one, it taught me how to learn. And not every university does that, I'll be very honest. Not every university does that. I've hired enough people through my career to know that there are certain schools that teach you how to learn. And it doesn't matter if you're top of your class from that school or the bottom of your class, because I was close to the bottom of my class at Harvard. It was a miracle that I graduated. When I came out, I knew how to learn, and I do hire from schools that I believe teach you how to learn. So there's a huge value of choosing the right school, and because it gives you the opportunity to do that. The second is that I was surrounded by some of the smartest people on the planet, right? I was class of 2005 at Harvard, and I spent a lot of time with class of 2006 as well. And we are talking about the founders and the CEOs of some of the top startups, technology companies in the world right now. I'm talking about my peers, were the people well, I'll put it this way. I went to my 10-year reunion in 2015, 2 years ago. And I walked up to a group of people who were like my buddies back in college. And I hadn't seen them for a few years, and I walked up to them and I was like, yo, guys, what's up? And this is, by the way, I was CEO of Digg.com at that point. And a lot of people consider that to be like, hey, you did a pretty good job with your career so far, right? So I walked up to them, they all looked at me, and then I realized that I was staring at the CEO of BlueApron.com, which is one of the best food service startups, the largest best food service startups in the world. It's like worth a couple $1 billion at this point. The founder of Airbnb, the founder of Facebook, and one of the senior most product managers at Facebook, right? Plus a number of other people there's so many startups, technology companies that are founded by that group of people. And now we're talking about also like general managers of baseball teams. We're talking about the managing directors of Goldman Sachs all over the world. These are some of the best people in the world. They're the most successful. I got to call them classmates. I got to learn from them in my 4 years. And now some of these great, good friends, I still get to call them and learn from them in their career and look to them as effectively like guideposts to how I should be operating. Those are the two things that I really take away from that education. Not so much the brand name. Certain universities will afford you that opportunity, so pick wisely.
What would your advice be, though, for people who don't get the opportunity, say, to go to those top universities?
A really, really good follow-up question. I would say this. You have to look for your own opportunity. If you're not in one of these brand name schools, don't go in with the expectation, there goes my career, right? Every school has those people that are humble and are curious and have discovered a lot in their life and are better than you and can teach you loads. Go find those people and surround yourself with those people. Not in like a weird, aggressive way, right? But because you sincerely want to learn from them. And then go find those opportunities. If your school, if there are certain classes that allow you to learn how to learn, go study that. But if the school doesn't allow you to do it, then whatever city you're in, go find the opportunity in that city or in your surroundings to go learn that.
I actually went to the FCC Journalism Conference and saw your talk there.
I'm so sorry about that.
So I just wanted to ask about news and journalism in general. I just wanted to ask, do you think like the advent of social media has harmed the credibility of news in terms of, for example, creating liberal and conservative echo chambers? As you said before, you know, you only have like your Facebook newsfeed is covered in like BuzzFeed and like left-wing articles. How do you think like you can solve the problem of the blurring line between opinion and actual objective journalism?
Okay, hold on. You just asked like 3 questions right there. Okay, let me address them one by one. Has social media hurt the credibility of news? It has only because people no longer understand what real news is. But social media should not have affected the credibility of the great news organizations in the world. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, South China Morning Post, these great news organizations in the world should not have changed the way we do journalism. Oh, are you giggling because I included SCMP with the New York Times?
Yeah. No, because you said these are great news organizations and you just said stay humble.
And I just said what?
You put SCMP in great, but you also said stay humble.
Stay humble. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now, I think that I'm trying to be humble, but the news organization, it's in itself great. It's 114 years old. It has existed through multiple different wars, and it still, to this day, has captured the history of Hong Kong and this region of the world better than anyone else.
Yeah.
So the news organization has nothing to do with me, because I've only been here for 4 months. The news organization is great. I'm not. Does that clarify? Okay.
I'm still going to giggle.
No, that's totally fine. You have every right to giggle. But these great news organizations in the world have not and should not have changed the way that they report because of social media. We should be able to leverage social media to make sure that our news gets to more people. But the way we report should not have changed. Okay, that's the first thing. The second one, has social media created echo chambers? Absolutely. It is really hard to get away from that. The reason why social media is so damn addictive is because it is an echo chamber. Trust me, you guys would not care as much about Facebook if or Snapchat if the people the stuff that you see does not reaffirm what you already believe, because it's much less interesting, right? It's much less addictive. So the fact that it's an echo chamber is very, very real. It actually adds to the value of that network for you as a user, okay? But it is very, very bad for news distribution. And your third question, have we blurred the line between opinion and news? Yes, we have. Right? I talked about this at FCC. I think that's the reason you're asking. The point I made in my FCC speech, the Foreign Correspondents Club here in Hong Kong, is that we have normalized opinion as news. An opinion has a very important role to play in the news industry, okay, because it provides context and it provides certain aspects of insight and analysis to the hard facts of news. But it is not news. It is ancillary to news and it is additive to news, but it is not itself news. And so when we have normalized opinion as news, we now will believe commentators as if they're telling us fact. They're not telling, most of the time, they're not telling you fact. They're taking some aspects of fact and telling you what they think about it. Both are important, but you cannot misunderstand the purpose of opinion and commentary.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing, Gary. So as a working adult, I will ask a question more related to the job. So with a strong background in like tech and startup, did you face cultural shock when you first joined SCMP? Well, most importantly, I'd like to ask, as a leader, how do you change the mindset of some of the staff who are not catching up?
Yeah.
And, you talk about humility. So how do you assert your belief in this, when there are staff who've been working for SCMP for many years, and
Yeah.
they say, hey, I know the way, I know it better than you do, so why are you teaching me this? So how do you strike a balance as a leader? Is like a real tough lesson?
Okay.
And second question.
That was, whoa. That was also 3 questions.
Right.
Yeah. Can I, because I'm going to forget. I was not smart enough to bring a pen and paper up here. Let me answer those 3 questions first. Did I experience culture shock when I first got to SCMP? The culture is very, very different from the world that I came from to the world that I'm now in. But I did not experience culture shock because I did my homework. Because I did enough due diligence and I spoke to enough people before I decided to take the job and before I moved to Hong Kong, that what I have seen so far is what I expected. In fact, I'll tell you that I've been so incredibly encouraged by how willing SCMP and this organization is to change.